Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode of Living Well with Janet, where we explore what it means to live well. I'm your host, Janet, a yogi, a meditator, plant forward eater, and all around wellness enthusiast. I'm also a second generation Asian American woman, an experimenter, and a deep thinker. Join me in my conversations and contemplations on the physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, social, and environmental aspects of living well. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to another episode. I'm going to kick things off with my current wellness practice. So, my current wellness practice is bed rotting. I know it might sound not very wellnessy at all, but I actually think it can be really, really beneficial and important and necessary to properly, deeply rest. I have been on the go a lot. I've been traveling. My schedule's been a bit irregular. My sleep has been a little bit irregular. And so this past weekend, I just spent like the weekend in bed. Instead of feeling bad about sleeping in or being in bed all day, I just let myself be there. And I would maybe have a meal and then come back into bed. I would then have my phone and just be scrolling or messaging people, but in bed. I think I even called a girlfriend and I was just to catch up and was still in bed. So that is my current wellness practice, bed rotting, because rest is important. I have spoken often and at length about my love for yoga. So, in today's episode, I'm going to talk about how I got into yoga, why I love it so much, and also share some tips for anyone who wants to get into yoga themselves, especially if you're in the LA area. It is a practice that involves the body, mind, and spirit. Yoga promotes balance, strength, and mindfulness. And what I like most is that it is a very self-focused, self-affirming, and non-competitive practice. You know how sometimes in physical sports or fitness, they say things like, you're not competing with anyone but yourself, which is great, right? It's supposed to be self-focused so that you're not looking or comparing yourself with others. But in yoga, they take it even a step further. It is not even about comparing yourself to yourself in another state. It is about being able to recognize where your body is in the present moment in order to be gentle with it and to give it what it needs. Even if you're accomplishing a really physically taxing and challenging flow or pose, it should never be punishing or harsh because it's based on the premise that your internal dialogue throughout the entire practice is supportive and loving and calm. Unlike some other fitness or sports, which can be focused on pushing yourself past your limits, ignoring your body's boundaries, that like no pain, no gain. The focus of yoga is on non-harming. So that is a big reason why I really love yoga. And I'm going to share with you a little bit about how my love for yoga started. It all began in high school. So I grew up in the dance studio taking ballet and jazz classes about 2 to 3 times a week for many, many years. And at one point I stopped and wanted to then in high school join the dance team. But in order to get back into dance classes, there was no way that I could go from zero and then go straight into like a ballet class or a jazz class because my body was just so not in shape to be able to do that. So the thing that I did to prepare to get back into dance classes was yoga. I have my dad, Papa Wang, to thank for this, for my discovery of yoga. You see, around that time, he had started practicing yoga as well. And he went to Costco and got this DVD. It was of Rodney Yee from Gaia. And I still remember it was a 60-minute long session that started with some pretty basic poses like Warrior 1, Warrior 2, and then it progressively got more advanced to Warrior 3, which is where you're balancing on a single leg, and then eventually you go into a full wheel pose. So what I noticed is that by just popping in this DVD in my living room and doing this session about 3 times, I could feel already a change in my body, that it was getting more flexible and more agile. And after only those 3 sessions, I was like ready to go back to dance classes. So I just found it to be a really effective way to warm my body back up. And then I kind of then just progressed into dance classes and for a long time stopped doing yoga. And it wasn't until I started working again when I was going through some pretty stressful career transitions, periods where I had more time in my schedule and was really looking for something to add structure and regularity, that I found myself returning to yoga. This time, though, I was in San Francisco and I looked up a couple of different yoga studios that practiced Bikram, which is a very specific type of hot yoga that, in its strictest form, is a series of 26 specific poses that you do in a room heated to 105 degrees Fahrenheit for 90 minutes. And every class is the same exact pose done in the same sequence. This sounds really intense, but I found that at that time I was looking for something and I was really craving something that was very structured and very regular and, with that level of intensity. The thing though is that even though you're going through a pretty regimented and challenging practice, the whole point of yoga is that your dialogue internally should be supportive and should be calming to kind of get you through it. Around this second phase of my life where I was going through career transitions, I had also other periods where if it wasn't Bikram, I was practicing hot yoga and I was going to a studio, getting up at 5 a.m. and going 3 to 4 times a week, just because I was in a season of my life where I really wanted structure and I really wanted more intensity from my yoga practice. But, those periods were finite and they would pass and I would find myself, either in another form of exercise or just kind of like not really practicing yoga. Which brings me to the third phase of my relationship with yoga. Around 2018, 2019, I started seeing a therapist pretty regularly and she recommended that I take some yoga classes. And I said, yeah, I've done yoga before. I don't really feel like doing yoga at the moment. Don't really want to get back into it. But through a lot of her convincing, I started going to a hot yoga studio and going pretty regularly. I remember she was like, you should just go to one class a week. And I was like, okay, fine, I could do one class a week. And then eventually she's like, why don't we up it? Maybe try a second time, a third time. And eventually I was going 3 times a week and it really, really helped my mental health. This lasted for about a year or so, and then we hit the pandemic and all of the yoga studios closed down. And that is when I started doing at-home practice. I discovered allomoves.com. They are a great online platform where I was able to find a bunch of different types of yoga, different styles, and also different durations. And this was the time when I really started to benefit from a practice that didn't have to be 60 minutes, right? Because the thing about going to studios and classes is that they're almost always in that format of like an hour-long practice. And I realized I could do 20 minutes of yoga a day and still feel really good and still get a lot of the benefits. So I would say that that is something, if you were thinking about getting into yoga and you're not fond of the idea of going through hour-long classes or in-person studios, consider an at-home practice. Hi there, enjoying the show? If you like what you're hearing and want more, you can become an ABG bestie and get our new audio episodes ad-free, special discounts and early access to merch, shoutouts at the end of our episodes, and we're bringing back our Dear ABG series as exclusive monthly Q&A sessions just for our ABG besties. Sign up through the link in our show notes. Who is planning to travel this summer? Isn't the struggle of packing for a vacation so real? I just want to get to the part where I'm on the beach already. But because we have to do the packing part, when I do pack for trips, I like to pack light. Only a few pieces of clothes that I mix and match. So this summer, I am packing my Quince pieces. They have timeless items like premium European linen dresses, blouses, and shorts starting from $30, washable silk tops, premium luggage options, and so much more. The best part, all of Quince items are priced 50 to 80% less than similar brands. We love a good saving, don't we? I especially love their washable stretch silk V-neck cami, which I have in ivory, black, and lava smoke. It is just such a great classic cut. And let's be honest, anything in silk, it just automatically feels fancy and elegant. I like to pair these tops with their silk skirt, which I like in champagne, but it comes in a bunch of other different colors. One of the best things about this matching silk set is that it doesn't require dry cleaning like most other silk materials. It is 100% washable, so I can just throw it in the wash with my other clothes, which is extra convenient when you're traveling. Another reason why I love Quince is because they only work with factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing practices and premium fabrics and finishes. So pack your bags with high-quality essentials from Quince. Go to quince.com/ABG for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns. That's QUINCE.com/ABG to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/ABG. Now, around 2023, which is last year, I did share on the Asian Boss Girl podcast, as well as this show, Living Well with Janet, that I kind of fell off of a consistent yoga practice. And honestly, so you know how they say sometimes you don't know what you have until it's gone? This was definitely the case. I saw a noticeable decline in my overall like mental and emotional well-being. Physically, it wasn't, I think it was much more of like the mental and emotional health that I saw suffer more than like a physical health issue. So I kind of learned my lesson. Now I try to be more regular with my yoga, which brings me to present day. And, since the beginning of this year, I've gotten back into a more consistent yoga practice. I checked out a bunch of different studios in the LA area at the beginning of the year, and I'll kind of talk through some of those later in the episodes. But now I regularly go to one studio for a vinyasa style hot yoga practice. I go 2 times a week, and within there, I mix in about 1 to 2 times a week. I'll do a 20 to 30 minute at home practice as well. So why do I continue going to yoga? I use it mostly as my main form of physical exercise. Like I shared earlier in this episode, when it comes to fitness, I am not fond of the like go hard or go home mentality, going super like ultra intense. I like yoga because I feel like it's much more of a like positive, self-focused, non-competitive practice. Unlike other fitness or sports, which can be focused on pushing yourself past your limits and ignoring your body's boundaries, the no pain, no gain, I really resonate with the fact that yoga focuses on non-harming and on positivity. Although you can treat yoga as a competitive or achievement-oriented practice. For example, you can say, I want to hit this pose, get certified to teach, or practice X times, a week or whatever it is. For me personally, beyond setting like a frequency of practice, like trying to get in yoga like 3 to 4 times a week, I don't try to set super harsh goals around yoga because I find that when I do that, it adds a little too much rigidity and it takes the joy out of it for me. But who knows? If you are the kind of person that works better with format like that, maybe that's what works for you. But I know for me, being able to keep my practice regular and joyful means that I cannot be super rigid with it. The other thing I really love about yoga is that it's really for everyone. During a class, you will often hear an instructor offer 2 to 3 various options for a flow or for a pose, depending on your level of experience. But also, they emphasize that which level you should be pushing yourself to in this given day is dependent on where your body is at the moment. So it's not about, you being like super advanced and someone else being a beginner. Even the most advanced person on any given day should be making a choice to do the beginner flow, right? And I think that's that level of like forgiveness and openness in yoga that I really love, that it's less about high achieving and trying to push to the max all the time and more about paying attention to where you feel in your body in that given moment, that given day, and being able to exercise that. I like that there is a gentleness to it, and there is a culture around acknowledging that someone who has been a longtime practitioner can still do beginner poses, and that in fact it's expected because your body is different from day to day, and promoting us to accept that and to kind of accept the fluidity of life. Whether you're a beginner or you're advanced, every pose has a version for you, and there's a time and a place for every pose. So that's something I really love. The other thing I love about yoga is the mental and emotional benefits. Like I shared, when I stopped practicing yoga, the biggest difference I felt was in my mental and emotional health. I feel like the fact that yoga promotes this mind-body connection really makes such a big difference to my mental and emotional state. And, even the way the instructors guide you through the flows and the poses, the very language that they use, it really supports a very mindful way of thinking and looking at the world and yourself. Another reason why I love yoga is the community. I feel like every person I interact with when I go to like the yoga studios, whether it's like teachers or students or the front desk person, they're all just so nice and kind and positive people. And I really like that. So I think the community and the culture around yoga really resonates with me as well. Now I want to talk a little bit about the type of yoga that I like to practice. For me personally, I love vinyasa, which is also called flow yoga. It's a very common style. Most likely, if you go to yoga studios, vinyasa is the type of yoga that's being taught. The word vinyasa actually comes from Sanskrit, and it means to place something in a sacred and special way. In vinyasa yoga, students are taught to connect each action to the next and to use their breath to guide their movements. So this type of yoga practices the alignment of movement with the breath and really focuses on constant movement versus some of the other types of yoga, styles of yoga that are focused more on like long holds. So I personally really like this style because I find that it's really great for maintaining and improving flexibility, for building strength, and because it's more like movement focused, I almost always break a sweat when I'm doing it, which I love. Another form of yoga that I've practiced in the past, but I don't anymore, is Bikram. Bikram is, I would say, a more intense version of vinyasa and is generally done in a heated room. And like I talked about before, is quite regimented, usually for 90 minutes. And it's the same series of poses that you do every single time and always in the same order. This type of yoga is good for breaking a sweat. If you really want to sweat, this is a good one to go towards. Or if you really like routine, since it's like the same poses that go through every class and it's practiced in the same order. I found it was great for a short period of time in my life, but it's a little too intense for me now. Another type of yoga is yin yoga. If you are someone who's looking for a slower style of yoga where poses are held for a minute and eventually extended for up to 5 minutes or more, this is a great one for you. Yin yoga is actually rooted in martial arts, and it's good for increasing circulation in the joints and to improve flexibility. It's also a really good type of yoga to use for recovery. So if you are someone who works out really hard and does other things and you are looking for like a more restorative practice, yin yoga is something that would be good to check out. Another type of yoga that is on the kind of slower and more meditative side is Yoga Nidra. And it's actually a guided meditation that helps you get into a state between sleep and wakefulness. And supposedly, if you do 1 hour of Yoga Nidra, it's equivalent to a few hours of sleep. So I don't know, that sounds pretty promising and something like I would love to check out. So if you're interested as well, maybe that's a good one to look into. Now I want to share some of my standout yoga experiences. Generally speaking, my experiences with yoga are pretty boring. I'm not really someone who seeks out retreats or excursions or sexy practices on the beach. I really just enjoy practicing yoga at home or in studios. I don't get too crazy with it. But there have been a few standout yoga experiences that I've had that are quite unique. So the first one I'm going to share is goat yoga. My friend Sheila, she always finds these really fun and unique events and activities and will drag me along. So one year for her birthday, she was like, "Hey, you like doing yoga? My birthday's coming up. You want to come do goat yoga with me?" And I was like, "Oh, what? Sure. Okay, why not?" And we went to Laughing Frog Yoga in Santa Monica. It was this ridiculous, but also really fun experience. They basically guided us through this yoga flow, and about 1/3 into the class, they bring out these goats. Basically, I think it was like 3 or 4 goats that they went for a class of like maybe 20 people. Each goat was guided by a person, and they would go into the practitioner, and we would be in a pose, and then they would put the goat on you to help like increase maybe add a little weight for the hold that you're doing, or just some fun interaction. And then at the end, there was this photo op. So I still have somewhere in my cell phone or somewhere, wherever it is, I have a photo with my friend Sheila for her birthday where each of us are in a yoga pose and each of us has a goat on top of us. So that was a unique experience. If you're looking for a fun activity to do with yoga, that's goat yoga. I would recommend looking into Laughing Frog Yoga in Santa Monica. Another unique yoga experience I've had is practicing aerial yoga. So like I said, I generally like a more common like vinyasa practice. I don't really get crazy with the acrobatic stuff, but there was this one time when I was staying in Miami for a couple of months doing this advertising bootcamp program, and I had signed up for the 24-hour fitness in that area. So they offered an aerial yoga class, so I decided to take it. And I will have to say, this is kind of before I became a little bit more snooty with my yoga preferences. Usually now I like to practice in studios that specialize in yoga, just because generally, like fitness studios, I find that when they teach yoga, it's a little bit more like fitnessy, if that makes sense. I don't know. But either way, I was very appreciative of this experience though. I tried this class and it was a lot of fun. They have basically these big draping pieces of silk cloth that hang from the ceiling, and each person has their own like kind of silk cloth drapey thing, and you basically hang from it, and the teacher will walk you through a variety of different flows and poses while you're creating these different forms by wrapping the cloth around your body in different ways. It can actually get pretty complicated, but the class I took was like a beginner intro class, and at one point the instructor guided us into a hammock position. And I just remember that being such a relaxing experience. Like, just imagine your body being completely just like letting go of all control. It is fully embraced by this cooling silk fabric, and you just feel like you're floating in space. That was a really good experience. That was super chill. I liked it, and I would definitely do it again. If you've ever thought about doing aerial yoga and haven't done it yet, I would definitely recommend giving it a try. Now I want to talk about a couple of my favorite yoga poses. Firstly, pigeon pose. This is one of my favorite stretches because it opens up your hips. They say often that you store a lot of past emotions and stress in the hips. According to Ayurvedic medicine, stress, sadness, and fear can be stored in the hips. So a pose like pigeon pose that can help release that pent-up stress is really like a yummy, good stretch. And also pigeon pose, in the classes that I take, it usually comes at the end of class. So for me, that pose always marks to me like, like at the end of a practice where you feel like you're wrapping things up and you're now reaping all the benefits of that session. Another pose that I like is crow pose. I like this one because it is one of the more challenging poses that I was proud to finally be able to do. It's an arm balance that uses your core a lot and also requires a good amount of wrist strength. My next evolution is that I would like to be able to go from crow pose into plank or a jump back. I haven't quite gotten there yet, but that's something I'm working towards. But yeah, it is a pose that I enjoy because it was a challenging pose that tested me and was kind of hard to get. But once I got it, I felt this great sense of accomplishment. Another yoga pose that I really love is the headstand. So this also very similarly is a pose that I used to be so impressed with when people would get into it during class. Like, it always felt like I was, watching people, like always in, during certain flows where the instructor would be like, and if a headstand is within your practice, go ahead and do that. And I would like look up from my yoga mat and see like all these people up in a headstand, and I'd be like, whoa, that's like never gonna be me. So then when I was finally able to do it, I felt so proud and really empowered that I was able to accomplish something that at one time felt like a total impossibility. Like, I look at those people who would do it so easily during class and I'm like, no way, there's no way that I will ever be able to do that. And then I did, and it felt great. And the other thing I love about the headstand is it's under the umbrella of a type of pose that is like an inversion, right? And inversions in general, I like because it increases the blood flow and circulation throughout your body. And when you go into an inversion, once you're able to relax into it, it really feels so good. Like, I can feel my blood circulation increasing to my head and the blood flow pulling from my legs and my feet. It just releases a lot of tension and allows the toxins to be flushed out with the blood flow. So love a good inversion, the headstand particularly, just because I have so many memories of watching people get into them and not being able to, and then finally being able to. Another pose that I really love, it's a good classic, it's a basic, downward dog. Why? Because I personally hold a lot of tension in my shoulders and in my upper back. So this pose, whenever I get into it, it feels so good. And oftentimes in like vinyasa flows, you don't stay in downward dog for too long. So that is something that I feel like you go into that pose very often, but oftentimes I'm like, oh, I want to just stay there a little longer to stretch a little bit more. But yeah, that's one of my favorite. It's a classic. Now I want to offer some tips for getting into yoga. So I would say it depends on your personality type. If you are someone who really likes to go hard, or maybe you're just in a phase in your life where you're really looking to like fully commit to something, I would say find a studio, sign up for a 30-day challenge, go all in, do it like yoga every yoga every damn day or whatever whatever the saying is. I've definitely had phases like that in my life where it worked well for me. And I think for sometimes that's like what you need is like a really intense session for like a month or two to get into it. And then you can shift into a more like sustainable practice. Or if you are someone who is not into the go hard, go all in type mentality, whether that's just not your personality or maybe right now in your life, like you just don't have the capacity for that, either in time or like mental, emotional space, I think it's very possible to get into yoga slowly and simply. Start by just learning 3 to 5 poses and practicing those 3 to 5 poses a couple of times a week, right? That's not even like, it'll take like 5 minutes. Or if it's not poses, maybe just start by getting into some simple stretches. Doing a 5-minute stretch every day makes such a big difference when you do it multiple times over time. With yoga, as with many other practices, I find that frequency is more important and effective than intensity. So doing 5 to 10 minutes of yoga 5 days a week, I personally think is more effective than doing 1 hour practices only once every like 2 weeks, right? Some gentle routine options, I would suggest checking out Yoga with Adriene on YouTube. She has a bunch of different videos that are shorter and are more gentle and just kind of go over some basics. So she would definitely be a good one to check out. Now I want to talk a bit about my favorite yoga studios in LA. So earlier this year, at the beginning of the year, I did a round of trying out different studios. It's like when it was like the new year and they had all of their like 2 free weeks of try us out. I was like, okay, let me try out all the different studios and figure out which one I like. I tried out Yoga 6 in Culver City. This is one that actually Mel turned me on to. So her and her roommate Darlene used to go once a week. And after they both moved out to New York, I was still going myself, and I would go a couple of times. This is a great studio for hot yoga. And they also have parking, which is a huge plus in LA. You park, it's like validated parking in their parking structure. And they also don't have mirrors. So this is something you'll find in a couple of different hot yoga studios where they want you to not be distracted by, I guess, like looking at yourself, right? And so that is something, if that's your vibe, that's a good one to check out. Another one is Hot 8 Yoga. They are also a hot yoga studio. And the thing that's different about them, though, is that they do have mirrors. And it's kind of up to your preference, right? Like I personally, I could go either way. I think it's beneficial to not have mirrors so that you're fully focused on just yourself and you're not like being distracted by looking at yourself in the mirror. On the other hand, if you like to adjust your positioning and know the proper form, mirrors can be really helpful for that. So if that is what you would prefer, then Hot 8 Yoga is a good studio for you. I will say though, I feel like there's something about their studios, at least the one I went to in Santa Monica, that felt a little bit more sterile to me. The lighting was just not as vibey as like Yoga 6 or some other studios, but to each their own. Another one that I've tried is Core Power. I would say Core Power Yoga is great if you're looking for a more like dance and aerobic leaning type of style. And they're also not heated. So it's room temperature. But of course, because, their routines I feel like can be pretty aerobic, you will break a sweat. The one though that I love and I've been going to for years now is Sweat Yoga. Sweat Yoga, they are a hot yoga studio. I go to the one in Santa Monica as well as the one in Little Tokyo in downtown. I just love everything about the studio. They do no mirrors. It's heated. They play great music. The lighting is such a vibe. It's like they have, more muted light bulbs that are almost like candlelight. And I just like the instructors. All of their instructors are just really strong, and when they walk you through the flows, they're very descriptive about positioning of the body, which I appreciate. So that is my main studio, but all of the other ones I've tried that I listed, Yoga 6, Hot 8, Core Power, they're also great options. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode and letting me divulge and sharing my yoga journey. If you can't tell already, I absolutely love yoga and I will promote it to anyone. I really think that anyone can benefit from yoga because there's just so many different types of yoga and it's just so great. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a yoga emoji. You know, the one that like where they're sitting cross-legged. Leave it in the comments, or in the comments, share your favorite yoga pose. Also, if there are certain topics that you want to hear me cover, either leave a comment on this episode on Spotify or on the post on Instagram, or you can DM me on Instagram. Once again, this is your host, Janet. I can also be found on Asian Boss Girl, the podcast for the modern day Asian American woman, with my good friends Helen and Mel, who are also hosting their own shows, which you can catch on this same feed, new episodes every Tuesday. You can follow ABG on Instagram at Asian Boss Girl, and me, Janet, at Janet W. That's Janet, the word double, and the letter U.